Matthew Moore's Wood Studio. It's Monday, May 23rd, which means it's time for another weekly shop update. I released an update on Saturday that I shot on Friday. Today is Monday. A lot of work has happened in between that time period, but I also wanted to put this update out before I started work on the tabletop, because there's a bunch of work that happened on the base, and I don't want so much work that I'm losing the work on the base for you guys to hear about. So let's get into it. First off, as you can take a look at the trestle and the two posts, you can see hopefully that there's some work been done. So the first major thing here is the trestle itself has been rough shaped. And I say rough because it still needs to be sanded, but it's pretty darn smooth. But there's still a whole bunch of facets remaining from the planing process. So this guy here is oval along its length and of course on the very top as well. It has a much more pronounced round over on the top and the bottom than it does here on the sides, but nonetheless it is oval. To start that process, I have this little guy right here, which is a template I made straight out of the plans. This template allows you to take this and then trace the curve that you want to create on your trestle on all four sides of the two. So 4 sides, 2 tenons in total. And that's what guides you during this process. I have no doubt that not everything is exactly the same shape from one side to the next, let alone in between. But it's relatively the same shape, and that's what matters. So once I had this template made, and then I turned to my bench and a whole bunch of hand planes. I started with my jack plane and a relatively thicker cut to remove a whole bunch of waste, and I started by removing the waste in the corners. And I stayed away from the center flat spots. Once I had the corners removed on all 4 sides, then I moved on to the flatter areas or the taller areas of the trestle. Once I got there, instead of using my jack plane, I pulled out my number 2 and started work. And all I did was remove material down to my lines, feathering in from the corners into the center and creating a curve along that entire length. Now with the curve roughed out on the tops and on the sides here, I still need to come in and do a bit more work on the actual curve on the top. And that's where I turned to a block plane to help me create a whole bunch of different facets which make this into a curved shape. These facets will all disappear when I do some sanding here, but they're still here, you can still feel them. And I think that's pretty cool actually. I also paid attention to how everything felt, and if there was a high spot anywhere here, I came back in with my number 2 and I brought that high spot down. So everything feels relatively the same height, the same feeling along its entire length. And I think it just looks fantastic. Now, this is a great detail, but another great detail in the whole trestle itself is the wedges. Now, these wedges you've seen before, but now they are shaped. So first I figured out it would be parallel to the very top of the leg, and then how far down I wanted to come, and then the total thickness or width of the wedge itself. Before going over to the bandsaw at the bench, I first cleaned up the top, and then I headed over to the bandsaw and I removed material from the bottom, cutting it the length, and then doing a rough rip to get the wedge to the desired width that I wanted. And then after cleaning it up a little bit with my block plane, I headed over to the sanding station and I sanded a corner to the bottom to create a shape. And that corner was laid out with a quarter. And that's pretty much what you have as a result right here. There's just a little bit more work that happened, and that was chamfering the edges along the exposed section, as well as chamfering the edges here on the roundover. And that's what we get for the wedge. This thing looks great and does an amazing job knocking, or not knocking the table together, but keeping the table together by forcing this tenon to get wider. And with that now locked in, I have a rock solid connection between the posts and the trestle, and nothing is going anywhere. So that pretty much concludes the major parts of the building process for the base. I can't do anything to these upper supports yet because I don't know what the final width of the tabletop is going to be. So over this next week, my concentration here in the shop for this project is going to be on building the jig for flattening the tabletop and then flattening the tabletop itself, which is going to be comprised of 3 different slabs. I've got 2 slabs back here, the ones on the top that are going to be the centerpieces, and they're going to end up roughly 8 feet long, maybe a little bit longer, but at least 8 feet. And then there's going to be extensions adding somewhere close to another foot. And those are going to come out of another board below it. And those 3 boards need to be flattened and brought to a uniform thickness all at the same time. So that's why I wanted to stop this, because there's going to be a whole bunch of talking in the next update about how I did all of that. So besides that, I'm about this close to releasing the plans for this project up on the school site. I'm this close, and I say that because there's still some stuff missing that are not going to be in the first revision of the plans. Like the exact shapes I'm using for the butterfly keys and the angles and stuff like that. Those will have to come in revision 2, but revision 1 of the plans is going to have everything dealing with the base, and that way if you're looking to buy lumber, you can definitely go out and do that now and start this project, because there's a lot of work in the base before you ever get to the tabletop itself. So I'm doing that because a whole bunch of yearly subscribers wanted to get access to this, and I'm doing this for you guys, so I'm doing it early. Besides this, my question of the week for you guys is this. How would you shape this trestle? What steps would you take to do this? Remember, it's got to be oval, it's got to have a curve over here, and it's got to have a much more pronounced curve on the top and bottom. So let me know in the comments for this video. I'm really curious how you guys would go about doing this. That's pretty much it for this week. As always, please subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and hit that thumbs up button if you like this video. If you're watching this on Facebook, hit the like button, share your timeline, and head over to the MM Wood Studio page and like us there as well. And as always, have a great week in the shop.